45.95. And the one to them, man. I can.
Good morning, or just about good day, noon, exactly noon. This is Peter Roker, Global Talk on Global Radio 99.5 in Nassau, Bahamas. Good to be with you. Before I go into any detail at all, I'd like to mention to you that the phone numbers here 242 326 0271, 326 0272. The WhatsApp number is 813-0271, and my cell number is 424-0749. Now, you can call me anytime you'd like to. Happy to say also that global Facebook, global YouTube, Cable Bahamas 974, www.global995fm.com, Tune In Radio, and you can download the Global 99.5 FM app on your smart devices. Good to be with you. Really, really good to be with you. Now, I expected Ms. White to be here this morning, but for one reason or the other, she is not. And, it just reminds me really of something I have to say to you in regard to that, being a business person, right? Something may have gone down which did not allow to be here. But, I've on this show mentioned Jason before, who really has been handling the show. And the fact that I could see how much he was into his work. And I would say offhand that when you're running a business and something happens where you cannot respond as you wish to respond, it's really, really good to have someone to say, okay, don't worry, I'll make it happen. And that's what Jason is doing. That's what I believe he's doing. Am I right, Jason? Thumbs up. Right. And that's very, very important, okay? Now, this morning, before I go any further at all, I want to play something. Now, this is something I came across, and since I've had my show, and then really throughout my entire life, this is really represents my mentality in terms of, how I think. And I could not believe my ears when I came across this, and, it was there for me to listen to. And I want to play this. I'm going to put this phone close to my microphone so you can hear it. Please listen to it. Please absorb this. Okay? Ready to go? Let's start.
The best way to keep a prisoner from escaping is to make sure he never knows he is in prison. In 60 seconds, you will understand how you are being held back by the Matrix. 1. Salary is the drug they give you to forget your dream. 2. School teaches you to follow rules, not break them. But only the rule breakers are the ones who succeed. 3. They don't want a nation of thinkers. They want a nation of workers. 4. You worked for 40 years, 8 hours a day. And after 40 years, you're still broke. Think about that for a second. 5. They teach you to be a good consumer, not a good producer. But in today's world, it's more important than ever to be able to create value. 6. They give you comfort through video games, movies, and shows. Comfort is a drug. Once you get used to it, it becomes addicting. Give a weak person consistent stimulation, tasty food, and cheap entertainment, and they'll throw their ambitions right at you. The best way to keep a prisoner from escaping is to make sure.
Now, that clearly states that's a serious statement, but it couldn't be closer to the truth. And when I heard this, I really, really wanted to share it with you for your consideration. Now, this morning, I spoke to one of my colleagues in the petroleum industry. Well, I spoke to one this morning. I spoke to one yesterday evening, and I mentioned that I would devote, if not 45 minutes to my show this morning, I would devote at least 30 minutes. And that would depend on the amount of persons either who called the my colleagues who would call in, or as many as I could talk about. So um, I'm going to start off by saying if any of my colleagues out there listening, the phone numbers here is 326-0271, 326-0272, and the WhatsApp number is 813-0271. Now, when I say my colleagues, these are the persons in the petroleum industry, which I'm a part of. I've been a part of since 1982. Now that's 82 to 2000 is 18 years. 18 and 4 is 22. That's 42 years. That's a good chunk of time, okay? And many of those persons are no longer with us. Some are. And what I recommended to them is that we have a roll call, ROLLCALL, where they'd be able to call in, say who they were, which service station they operate, some of the things that they did during this time, the persons they mentored, the people they helped, how many people they presently employ, and to give a synopsis of what's happening in their life in 5 minutes, you know what I mean, so to speak, right? But if you can get people to call in, fine. If they aren't able to, okay, I will do as much as I can on the phone, on the radio, on my show. So I'm going to start off with, well, the first person I'm really going to start off with, whom I've mentioned on the show before, is Porky Dorset. Now, Porky Dorset is extremely well known, and he runs the Ruber station on East Street, close to Pinewood Gardens. Porky is a total entrepreneur. And, you know, he not only runs and started that service station with his family donkey years ago, I think over 50 years ago, but he has other businesses, very, very enterprising. But, you know, what is interesting is that if you go to social media, you'll see where Porky Dorset is on Facebook attending a Rotary meeting, I assume, that took place at the Nassau Yacht Club. I assume that part of it, right? But it was a Rotary meeting. He went there, and if you go on Facebook or other form of social media, you'll see where Porky took the opportunity of discussing the plight of the petroleum dealers. He was dressed in his normal construction paving uniform, which is a hazardous shirt you use, reflectors on it to make you obvious to the driving public. And it is a working man's shirt. He is the owner of that company, but he is wearing the same shirt as his workers are using, his supervisors or his laborers. And that is the kind of person that he is. Now, I don't know. At one time, Porky had told me how old he was, but Porky the other day he had a birthday, and I'm sure it must be 70 or beyond, okay? And here's a man at least 70 years old that's probably working or could work 10, 12, 15 hours a day. And he has built up a tremendous business out there. He's a landmark, very, very hardworking person who can now stand up and say that he is not happy in the industry that he's put his whole life into. His whole life, a whole lifetime. No complaints, hardworking. And so, to my mind, every segment of our community has to pay attention to that, because someone who's not somebody going into the business, somebody being in the business all their life, and now they can say that in spite of all their hard work, they're losing money. They're faced with the probability of not being able to continue in business. And I can tell you without any fear of contradiction that this is what's happening across the board in the retail petroleum business in this country. This is what is happening across the board. And, you know, before I go on to the next person I want to mention, because I will be talking about this, and of course, if anybody calls in, the number here is 326-0271, 326-0272, and the WhatsApp number is 813-0271. So the next person I want to highlight, and then before I go off to the next person, I want to say something to you. What about Porky's family? I met his son at auctions, his sons. They are industrious people helping their father, doing their work. And that is the fiber of a country, the working people in the country. And that's what they're doing. Now, when I switch over to another dealer, good friend of mine, we did some really things together, some of it quite mischievous, right? And that is Clyde Pratt. Clyde Pratt, good Long Island, South Long Island man. I know years ago, used to sell insurance, did a very good job in that, excellent job in that. And for one reason or the other, took on a service station, which would have been a Texaco service station that used to be operated by or owned, I think the property may have been owned by Mr. Allen a number of years ago. Took that over and made a resounding success of that business. I can't say how many years, but I know it has to be quite a number of years ago. Quite a number of years ago that Clyde got involved with the service station business. I do know, I have the privilege of knowing his wife, an educator in the Bahamas, a top educator in the Bahamas for a number of years. I believe she's retired now, but top educator in the Bahamas. I know that a number of years ago, his daughter became an attorney, and now you would, I guess, term her as being a seasoned attorney. Now, here's a man of this background that devoted his life to the petroleum business, was a part of promoting the petroleum business, was a part of being open 24 hours, serving the public. And let me tell you something about the petroleum business. It's a very difficult business to operate. Not many people with college degrees, university degrees have gone bankrupt trying to operate a petroleum business. Very, very difficult. Not easy at all. Very, very difficult. And so when you see someone like Clyde Pratt devote a good portion of his life to that industry, he is really, really doing something great, because this is an industry that serves the public, that it's not easy to do. But when you fast forward to where there's no appreciation for that, then you realize that something is wrong. When people can strenuously give of themselves to become mentors, when you see a person like Clyde Pratt, there are persons out there that would approach him as they would have approached me and say, Mr. Pratt, you remember me? Well, you know what? I used to work for you years ago. Man, you helped me, you gave me discipline, and now today I'm a doctor. Now today I'm an expert mechanic. Now today I'm a mason. Now today I'm a defense force officer. So persons like Clyde and many other petroleum operators would have done this. They are responsible for the good outcome of many Bahamians in this country. Many Bahamians. And so I want to take the opportunity of congratulating Clyde, as I would have congratulated Porky, of devoting a good time in your life and making something work that other Bahamians should want to emulate. But the one problem in our face and in their face, it is not appreciated because they are tied down to a system that could very well put them into bankruptcy. And that's unfortunate, simply because people ought to be rewarded for their efforts, and there must be a level playing field. Now, after talking about Porky, I want to talk about the industry. I want to talk about the industry. And that is that, give me a bit of water here. That is that the petroleum industry, the retail petroleum industry, is an essential part of the day-to-day function of any country, and particularly our country. Particularly our country. And I'll tell you why. You see, let's say for argument's sake, if you are in Canada, you could go to the US and buy fuel. You go across the border, there are a number of borders there. If you are in Mexico, you can go to another country. If you're in Costa Rica, you can go to Panama. If you're in Guatemala, you can go someplace else. But when you start talking about an island nation, the only place you can go to buy fuel is overboard in the ocean, and you're going to find them there. And so the supply of fuel to the general motoring public is a dire necessity. And those persons involved in that need to be appreciated. And no one in their right mind should think for a second that these persons can be brushed aside as not being necessary. Very careful about that. You be very careful about that. And do not take that for granted. And I can only make a comparison by saying that if you have someone good in your life, let's use an example. Say you have a good wife, works hard with you, does everything to help you, watches your back, takes care of you. Okay, 10 years older, yeah, okay. And all of a sudden, you start getting ideas that, hey, listen, man, something out there a little more attractive. And you are not careful in treating that person the right way. Then all of a sudden, you find out that what you thought was attractive is the horrors of horrors of horrors. Because see, when you start messing with this situation, you will find that someone who is willing to accept a reasonable profit for a lot of work, and when you ignore that, later on you end up with the terror of dealing with persons that couldn't care nothing about you and don't have any competition and therefore can do what they want to do to you. Now remember that. Now, I know for a fact that the public is on the side of the petroleum dealers because Bahamian people understand. They know these people. They know what they go through. And the Bahamian people will understand that you cannot get blood or nothing else other than stone on the stone. And let's go deep into this. If you own and operate a normal business, let's talk Turkey. Let's talk. If you own and operate a business, let's say a food store, argument's sake. Well, there are a number of items that you can sell in your food store for 100%, 150%, 80% markup, 75%, 50%, 40%. But then the government comes along and says to you, okay, we're now introducing price control. And we're going to reduce tariffs, make incentives on certain products we feel that are essential to the Bahamian public. And therefore, having given these incentives, we are going to demand that you sell them at a certain percentage. Now, we don't care if you sell the other item for because we just don't care. This is not an essential, but they're not under price control, period. But these items here under price control are going to be 22 or 23% maximum. Now, if you want to go lower than that, you can go lower than that, but you can't go any higher than that. That's price control. But when it came down to the petroleum industry, the government decided that they're going to have a fixed margin, FIXED margin, which then says to a reseller, a petroleum dealer, we don't care what you pay for this product, but you have to exist on a fixed margin, which I believe is 54 cents presently. You can't run a business like that. You cannot run a business like that. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. Everything is based on what you pay compared to what profit you can expect. So when you fast forward that situation, today, the resellers are making an average of about 8% gross. 8% gross. It's impossible to run a business like that. And that is why they will get in trouble. They are getting in trouble. And that it has to be remedied. It must be remedied. It has to be remedied because it cannot work. When you have the lowest percentage for other businesses being 22 and 23%, it can't work. So this has to be remedied. You know, there are people in business that if this is now, remember, this is 8% gross. This is not 8% net. This is 8% gross. All of your expenses, BPL, which has gone ridiculous, okay? All of the other things and other taxes and whatever else come out of that. All the payroll, everything comes out of that. That's gross. And some businesses, if they don't make 8% net, they puff up. Okay, they puff up. So it cannot work. And it's going on and on. It's been going on for the last 3 years. If not, well, it's been going on for probably, I think the last increase may have been over 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But the point I'm getting at, something is terribly wrong with that. And it has to be addressed now, because if not, the realization is where a good segment of the business community is going to go out of business. And what we have to think about is, what is it going to be replaced with? What is it going to be replaced with? You answer that question. What is it going to be replaced with? And that is where the public must understand. And they do understand. They must think, do I allow this to happen because it's not my problem? Well, that ain't my concern, that ain't my problem. Or do I understand that today, them, tomorrow, me? Cannot work. And the agitation that might be necessary to resolve this should not be necessary. Should not be necessary. The government of this country, you see, let me say something to you. When we look at the world, and when we look at the commerce, what we have to understand is that we have no control over cost, because we have decided to become more and more and more consumers. We don't worry about manufacturing anything, basically, essentially. And even when you look at the farming industry, yeah, we got people out there, good farmers in this country, but when you look at what we had, and you fast forward today, but even if we produced all the food in the world, we're not producing petroleum. And so petroleum is out there on the market. Today, it might be costing $4 a gallon. Tomorrow it might be cost $6 a gallon, $8 a gallon. Who knows? And so it, in my opinion, is an insult to the public to think that anyone can change the logic in how this product is sold, because the people selling this product is entitled to sell it under the conditions where they are able to exist financially. And I don't care how big the entity is or the conglomerate is, the same thing, the same logic applies. When you go and see some of these 10th, forget about third world countries, when you see some of these 10th world countries, they got that way primarily because they ignored the logic. They totally ignored the logic, which meant that they got rid of persons willing to work hard to make an honest, decent living. Got rid of them. Oh, you a pig, you're a hog. You want to make too much money. They got rid of them. Okay? And what was replaced? What replaced that? You know what replaced that? Persons who could make the government bend backward and do what they told them to do. That's what happened. Make the government bend backward and bribe the government and tell the government about its hip. Okay? And of course, short supplies, no supplies, people running around with cans trying to find it, and people rioting, long lines. Forget your tourism. Forget it. Okay? And so we have to understand what we're dealing with. And yes, any effort to alleviate our dependence on fossil fuel is a good idea as long as it's equitable for the persons who deal with the commodity. In other words, someone told me the other day, yeah, you can build something that you require electricity to operate, but the fossil fuel needed to operate to obtain the electricity is greater than the the petroleum you burn. Now listen, a half an hour, I can't believe it, Jason. Holy Lord, I can't believe it, Jason. Seriously. Guys, listen, half an hour has gone by and we're going to have a little break so I can pay some bills, okay?
I don't want them too slim. I want them nice and bright and real good look like them treat them. Have date a Jamaican, have date me a Haitian. I'm going back to the Bahamas right now to date a Bahamian. I'm going by Peter Roker.
This is Peter Roker, Global Talk on Global Radio, 99.5 in Nassau, Bahamas. Numbers here 326-0271, 326-0272. WhatsApp number is 813-0271. Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Cable Bahamas Live 974, Cable Bahamas 974. And of course, www.global995fm.com and TuneIn Radio. And you can download the app on your smartphone. Okay, let's play some bills. I want to tell you about a very exciting situation, and that is Lil Giant, RWI, which stands for Regional Wholesalers and Importers. Lil Giant, you know Lil Giant, in the Bargain City Shopping Plaza. Here to serve you. Back with a vengeance. Containers are rolling in. The shelves are getting restocked. The yard is getting restocked. Well, we don't have everything yet, but they are getting there. Number is 361-2086. You got people like Betty, Miss Taylor, Valerie Taylor, Dorothy, there to serve you. There to serve you. And here to serve you. They have a reputation. Well, they had some problems. They had some problems, and the problems have now been solved. They're back, large and in charge, with cement, lime, white cement, plywood, lumber, sheetrock, Durarock, nails, And they have these good hours, man. They have these good hours. They don't just want to serve you from Monday to Saturday. They're going to serve you on Sunday. You got a little chance to do some work around the place. They open. As is their sister company on Malabar Highway and Bellet Road, Builders Discount Depot. Same mentality. Now, Little Giant is open from 7 until 3:30, Monday to Saturday, and from 7 to 3:30 on Sundays, and of course holidays. But and they will soon be changing those, upping those hours. Once they get the public to know that they're back in the game, they'll be doing that. But Builders Discount Depot, better known or also known as BDD, is open from 6:30 until 5. You can shop at your leisure. Go home, get a little shower and come back out and buy, or stop early in the morning before you go into work with your crew so you don't waste any time before traffic and buy. So the mentality with them and their motto is here to serve you. Back on Carmichael Road, City 2000, which we created. We did that. We did City 2000. Okay, we did City 2000. You hear other people talking about City 2000. We did that. We made it happen. Okay. And now on Mala Butler Highway, Ballard Road, and Faith Avenue, we're gonna get some. We talking about. Listen, you got some people in that area, and I can tell you some of those people. I can name some of them. Man, listen, you got that tasty Carabiner Light, blazing, man. They hot as fire. You want the best food in the world? You go there, right on Faith Avenue, and together with all the people on Faith Avenue and Fire Trail Road, we are going to create the most important business zone, or one of the most important business zones on this island. We can do it. Okay? So, Little Giant, large and in charge, back at the Bargain City Plaza. What do they call it now? They changed the name, They changed the name. I don't know why. I even forgot what they changed it to. They go, I think Blue Marlin. Okay, okay. But boy, listen, it's Bargain City, and it is right before you get the Golden Isles Road, and they are there waiting to serve you. Valerie, Betty, Dorothy, and a bunch of other good people, including Chriselle. Okay? So please go down there, and also BDD, and you got good people down there to serve you. You see the big yard with all of the pallet racking, all the sand, the rock, shingles, best deal on shingles. So go down there. Get down there. I'm going to give you no pricing and stuff like that. You know why? Because you need to go down there and get that experience for yourself, okay? Okay, back to the show, Jason.
Ah, boy. Mr. Roker, what you say, man? Man, I hear you got some of them guns called the Super Soakers.
The noise.
What's the prices on them, man? $45.95. I'll give me one or two of them, man. I can invite Peter Roker to buy me.
This is Peter Roker. Global Talk on Global Radio 99.5. Here, I'm just going to say here to serve you, but I'm back in my ad mode. Long habits die hard, eh? But anyhow, good to be here with you. And we talked about the petroleum industry. I guess no one had a chance to call in, but nonetheless, I did mention two of my colleagues, Porky Dorset and my good friend Clyde Pratt. I want to mention people like Mike Wells. Well, Mike in that rich area out on West Bay Street. And these are people who've been in this industry for a long part of their life. His wife, fantastic wife, Joyce, used to be in the banking industry, and they build those businesses up. They work very hard, extremely hard. I mean, these are people who put their whole lives into something, man. Where's the conscience? Where's the conscience? Where's the conscience? These are people put their whole lives. Mr. Moore, Mr. Moore, Mr. Moore. Okay? Brilliant, brilliant person. Brilliant person. Brilliant. Whole life in his business. Whole life. And his wonderful wife. Wonderful wife. Whole life. How about Mr. Hepburn? Mr. Hepburn. How about him? The ability to run these stations is enormous. Takes a lot of talent. People don't understand. And to have these people on edge about losing everything is not a good idea. Not a good idea. When you going in the public purse and getting millions of dollars out to save things and you letting people get destroyed, no. The public understands they cannot get, the public, the Bahamian public, understands they cannot get something for nothing. They understand that. When they go in the banks, they get bank charges. When they go in the other shopping places, they get charged for what they buy. The public understands that. And so we need to stop in our tracks and correct this situation. Okay? You have places like Mrs. Johnson who are sacrificing. Okay? You've got many people out there that sacrifice so much that do not have an alternative to making a decent living. And so I will continue to highlight these persons. I'm a part of the industry. I know I've got into it in 1982. I mentioned that to you before. Now I'm going to switch gears here because I didn't mention it before, but I've had some feedback from the region. And as a matter of fact, I do know that they have taken excerpts from my show. And I've had one entity that has reached out to me and encouraged me to devote at least 5, if not 10 minutes of my show to a subject. Well, most of my subjects can be recognized for the entire region. But having said that, what they've asked me to do is to use 5 to 10 minutes exclusively for something that could be used to showcase in the region that wouldn't be necessarily tied to the Bahamas or tied to Jamaica, but would apply across the board to any of these islands, whether it be Trinidad or some of the French islands, some of the Dutch islands, that sort of thing. You see, so I'm going to do that right now. It's now, it's now 12:44. I'm going to spend 5-10 minutes on that. Okay. I was visiting Jamaica. Well, okay, let me go back a bit further. Let me go back. One day, I was in my office upstairs at Bargain City, and I was reading a Tribune. I saw in the Tribune there was an article, and it was an extremely disturbing article, very disturbing, because what the article was saying was that the government had plans to ban the importation of used tires into the country. Now, at that particular time, owning Roker's gas station at the time, I was just getting out of the used tire business, so it didn't really affect me. I was getting out of it. But the rationale that the government was using was that used tires were dangerous. Used tires created mosquitoes and all kind of things that used tires, all these bad things that used tires did. I thought to myself, no, you know what, my mentality would be, it doesn't make any sense to import a no good used tire. So then again, when you buy a new tire and you put it on a vehicle, it's not a used tire. And whereas if someone couldn't afford a tire for $100 and some dollars, they might be able to afford a tire for $30, $35. And I got suspicious. I got very, very suspicious. And it took lobbying beyond imagination to rescind that, or not to rescind it, because it hadn't been made a law, but to stop that in its tracks. And I will go to say and put on record that I found out later that this was lobbying by entities that did not want to have their bottom line affected. That's what it was. You get what you fight for. Now, the other situation, which is a lot more pertinent perhaps to the region as well, although the used tires would certainly be, was that I haven't bought a new car for ages. Now, in Jamaica, I was in Jamaica a number of years ago, and the car that I'd rented, I wanted to clean it off the day before I was leaving because it got a little bit muddy. It looked kind of bad, so I stopped by to get it cleaned off. And so I was talking to the young man, very ambitious young man, very, very ambitious, happy and laughing and working hard, very ambitious. He's trying to make a living, right? And so I said to him, I said, what's the duty on these cars? And he was like, a certain year would be, or I think back then across the board, like about 65%. I said, well, that's the same thing they're doing in the Bahamas at the time. 65 or 68%. And I got to realize that the rationale was that, oh, these will use cars, they're dangerous, they ain't safe, they ain't this, they ain't that, they're not the next thing. But let's bring this thing out in the open. I don't have anything against new cars. But what I find to be absolutely atrocious is where I can go, or an average person can go, and easily finance a brand new car for $50,000 to $75,000. Get them to get comprehensive insurance. Excuse me a second. Hello. No, my dear. Call 461-1350. Right in Little Giant, right in the back there. You go right, you drive right in the back, and they're right there. You're on radio right now, okay? Okay, dear. All the best. Thank you. Hey, oh Lord, I gotta laugh. That's somebody calling me, right? Looking for the lumber company, Little Giant, and of course, that's is my whole life. Okay, very open, and so don't expect me to do things the normal way. But the point that was getting at, by the time you put that insurance in there and all of the other charges, you're dealing with a 4-year situation. You're tied up. And you're tied up with something that cannot produce anything for you. Now, if you got the money to write a check for it, no problem. Or if you got the money and can afford to do it, and for one reason or the other, you want to use a bank, no problem. But if you are a poor person like me, and you want to get somewhere, you can go and buy a car for $4,000 to $5,000 and pay for it and own it. It burns less gas. It makes all the sense in the world. All the sense in the world. So why would any government go and put a 65 or 68% duty on that? Who's voting for them? Who's voting for them? You tell me. Who's the guy who needs help? You tell me. And you see, talking about the region, that's what I found out. Now, I started to talk about this in 44 minutes, and now it's 52, so I got about 2 more minutes to talk about that. But that is what was happening in the region. So if we as a people don't begin to compare notes in the region, then all we are is a bunch of stuck-up people not communicating. And that is what was happening in the region. Now, I think since then, they say, well, okay, 10 years or whatever. But then again, who they discuss this with? What in other words, what is the rationale behind that? Okay? A motor vehicle, as is an airplane is judged by the engine hours. You got DC's freeze, which was in the last World War, flying today. They take one engine out, put another engine in. Or if the engine hours are not there and the frame time is not there, that plane is still flying. Iron don't just deteriorate like that. And so with a motor vehicle, it is not the age that makes the difference. It is the miles on the vehicle. So not 10 years. I bought used vehicles that have had 15 years old, got 10 miles on them. That's a brand new vehicle. I know I bought a Surf one time, a Toyota Surf one time, and I drove that thing forever and ever, amen. Okay? And it worked. Okay? So what I'm saying, in this region, we need to compare notes. What is happening in Jamaica? What is happening in the Bahamas? What is happening in Barbados? What is happening in any Trinidad, Guyana? What is happening? What's going on? And so that is now my regional comment that is out there for the wider community to at least be exposed to, okay? Now we're moving on pretty close to our next break, and this time seriously, this time just really flies by, tremendously, right? Now I want to go on to another subject, and you know, I know years ago in my show, I would bring a newspaper with me, and I would highlight an article and discuss the article. But I want to discuss something which is nothing I thought about, but it's something that I heard or listened to on Facebook, and that is the former Prime Minister, Mr. Minnis, discussing. And not that I have any knowledge with it, right? But I have had experiences with the Power and Light Company. I won't go into that so much, right? But what he was saying is he was asking questions that, in my opinion, have to be answered. The questions I heard him ask have to be answered. Because any citizen of this country has an undeniable right to ask questions. And the questions that he is asking need to be answered. He needs to be shown that what he is alluding to is not the case. And if what he is alluding to is the case, then it needs to be looked at and it needs to be dealt with. And I, for one, I am not prepared. I am not prepared to go along with anything that deprives anyone else out of anything that they're entitled to. And what this interprets to, the public purse is the most sacred entity that any country has. And I said before, is when these deals are cut, okay, and they're not in the best interests of the people of a country, they're not legal. They cannot be legal. I don't know how to be a KC or QC to know this. I don't have to be a high school graduate to know this. I don't have to be a college graduate to know this or a university graduate to know this. I know this by being a human being. That one set of people cannot have success beyond imagination, while other sets of people are being deprived and suffering. It cannot happen because we have too many examples in the world where the massive suffering has occurred due to this mentality. We have enough examples in the world where there are countries that people are leaving in masses, nowhere to go, trying to cross rivers and being eaten by alligators and drowning. Well, just the other day, for God's sakes, I read in the papers where the Coast Guard and I think the Bahamian authorities are trying to locate a boat supposedly with 60 souls aboard. 60. Bingo. Can't find them. Disappeared. Okay? And so the questions that he is asking has to be answered. We're not dealing with any jokes around here. And the country must go back in our history and look and examine all those things that could be wrong because they're not legal. Trust me on one thing. They aren't legal. Mike, break again, okay?
This girl think I's a joker. Take off her clothes and soca. Should I get me a big thing? Should I get me a slim thing? I want a girl from my arms right
This
down
is
to
Peter
my
Roker.
big thing. I don't want them too fat.
Global Talk on Global Radio 99.5. Good to be with you. 326-0271. 326-0272. WhatsApp is 813-0271. And my cell number is 424-0749. They're all 242s, okay? Good to be with you. And I'm having a really, really, in my opinion, interesting show to me today because it's highlighting a lot of things. But let me get into my ad for a second. You know, a lady just called in a minute ago and she asked about the gas station, Roker's gas station. Somebody else calling again. It's a private number this time. Hello? Who's this? Yes, sir. Go ahead. Okay, I know that there are additives that can go for gasoline and diesel, but you gotta be very careful. And my advice to you, first of all, I'm not really qualified to give you advice, right? But my suggestion would be that if you're gonna do anything different with a vehicle, consult with someone that knows about the vehicle. You follow me? Oh, I understand. No. Well, okay. Let me answer that question because, okay, hold on. Stand by. Okay, I got you on speaker. Okay. Now that's a very, very interesting question, and I can say without any fear of contradiction that no station that I know of would put an additive into their fuel tank. Now, having said that, the major petroleum dealers, which in the Bahamas would be Shell, Rubis, and Esso, right? Now, when I say those companies, no matter who they're being operated by, Shell is selling Shell fuel, Rubis is selling Rubis's fuel, and Sol Petroleum is selling Esso fuel. Now, traditionally, these companies have different things they claim to enhance their fuel, which would be in the form of additives. They don't tell you what they are because they're trade secrets. You understand me? But I do know as a reseller, as a gas station dealer, we are not allowed to put additives in the fuel that we are delivered from the petroleum company. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers my question, and it leads me to this question because if they add in this whatever agent it is to the fuel, right? I'm of the opinion that it helps it to evaporate faster. It doesn't do, in my opinion, anything to assist with the performance of the vehicle or make the vehicle last longer or the engine run smoother.
Well,
The various stations you go to them, because I try all. I used to say I can stick with one brand, but I've tried all of them. And it's to me like the gas you put it in at 9 o'clock and 9:05, the time drop down to half. So I'm of the opinion whatever it is they are adding to the fuel, ethanol or whatever gas or additive, it isn't about the performance. It's about making a quick sale and turnover. And you've been in the business for 10 years. You would give me your opinion on that.
Okay, now I just want to be clear on one thing. When you say they, are you referring to the gasoline dealer, or are you referring to the
I assume it's the dealers because you say that you could say without fear of contradiction that the retailers don't add additives, so it must be added at the borders.
No, when I
on the fuel ships.
okay, no, when I say the dealers, right? The dealers is the reseller. What I said, I want to be clear about this, right? What I said is that the person who operates the individual gas station should not be putting anything in the fuel that they are delivered. Okay? Let me tell you how this thing works, right? The fuel comes from overseas, and the fuel that comes to this country by the 3 different petroleum suppliers is controlled by them.
Yeah, I understand all of that. My question is, Mr. Roker.
Yeah.
I go away oftentimes and I drive the same vehicle. I go to the SD company and rent the same vehicles and I get a foot length of gas. And sometimes I travel from state to state.
Right.
And the tank barely moves. You understand?
Right, I understand.
So that same vehicle you bring out to Nassau, fill it up with the same amount of petrol. And you travel up the same amount of miles. Of course, you have to go back and forth because
right.
Nassau ain't as long as the U.S. And you get less mileage per gallon. So, it's obviously something going on. And I think we need to have an oversight commission or body to investigate these things because fuel is burning too fast, in my opinion, in this country for it to be the same grade of fuel as being sold in the U.S. or any other country in the world. And that's all I want to say. I want to hear your opinion on that.
Of course, yeah. Well, let me say this to you. As a consumer, you are a consumer. You pay for what you get, and you are totally entitled to question anything you come across. And I would recommend that you bring this many ways. There are many ways of dealing with this, right? One would be, in my opinion, to deal with the petroleum company at first. You always give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Give them an opportunity to address your concern. And I would deal with the 3 of them. I would recommend that you deal with the 3 of them because, after all, they're in business. They've been in the business for a very, very long time. And I think, in my humble opinion, they would be entitled for you to approach them as a consumer and voice your concerns. Then, obviously, if you're not satisfied with their answer, you are then entitled, you're always entitled to go direct to the government. Because they have the last, well, they don't have the last say. You have the last say. You, as the consumer, has the last say. But then that would, in my opinion, be the protocol. I want to mention really, really quickly. Yesterday, I was buying fuel at a Uber station. I'm standing there serving myself. I did see the Bureau of Standards. There is a Bureau of Standards that deal with the petroleum companies, and so you do have a voice. And but I would give the oil companies or petroleum companies the benefit of the doubt. The line of action, in my opinion, would be you contact the 3 of them, okay, and that would be an opportunity of them having a chance to talk with the consumer and take it from there. Okay, I hope that I've provided some type of advice you can use. Okay, all the best, man. Take care. Okay, Jason, good back to the show. I have my ad period, but I won't spend too much time other than saying that. Ready to go, Jason? Okay. That Little Giant Discount Lumber and Building Supplies on Carmichael Road in the former Bargain City Plaza is there to serve you. That Builders Discount Depot on Ballard Road, 5th Avenue and Mile Butler Highway, sub-mile Butler Highway is there to serve you, okay? Please patronize them because please go down there and see them. Go down there and see them. because they want to serve you, okay? And any problems, you got my cell number, 424-0749. I'm hands-on. I will certainly address any concern you have on my show or off my show. Okay, listen, let's go. Back to the show.
Ah, boy. Mr. Roker, what you say, man? Man, I hear you got some of them guns called the Super Soakers. Yeah. What's the prices on them, man? $45.95. I'll give me one or two of them, man.
This is Peter Roker, Global Talk on Global Radio 99.5 in Nassau, Bahamas. Good to be with you. Now, that call there was a consumer, and they had a legitimate concern. Anyone, you see, the problem I have really is that anyone that spends their money is entitled to a standard of service, and for questions that are asked to be answered to the best ability, and at the end of the day, get to the bottom of anything. So yes, he's saying that he rent a car in the States, drive all over the place, and he feels that gas seems to last longer than when he drives in the Bahamas. Well, you see, sometimes like on the show, I feel like 5 minutes went by, and Jason telling me it's time for the ad is 30 minutes gone by. So there can always be an explanation, but everyone's entitled to one. And I don't see that happening across the board in the country, because you see, the last show I had here last week, a week ago, I mentioned the fact that I was driving around with no plates in my car. And I didn't see the big difficulty in the Ministry of Transport licensing place giving me 2 pieces of paper that they can laminate and me put in my car in the interim. Because, I would point out that, you see, the fact that I'm driving without a plate and hit someone and they have no way of identifying the car that hit them doesn't please me, because if it's happening to me, then someone else can hit my car and don't have a license plate on. So this is a very simple thing, and it's not something that really should happen. And of course, when it's mentioned on the radio, I don't know. Maybe no one's listening. Well, it's obviously someone's listening. I just had a telephone call, and so basically, this is stuff that the public should always be kept in mind, and that's why I was talking about the dealers, about the gasoline retailers. The public is there. All the public wants is to be reasonable. But getting back to the topic that Mr. Minutes was talking about, okay? It's a hard pill to swallow, because when you trace it, like I was talking about the 60 people, I know when I was growing up and I heard that somebody was murdered, that was a sensation. Somebody lost their life. It was a sensation. That was, unbelievable. And today, you can be hearing that in the newspaper, 60 people are missing. But it goes back to the absolute terror, terror, that is entailed in making a mistake that your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren will suffer for. That's what you're dealing with. And it is unacceptable in our time to allow anything to happen without a shot being fired that can deprive not only your children or your grandchildren or great-grandchildren, anyone else's children or the persons who would come along after them. Now a person say, man, I dead and gone, I ain't care. I dead and gone. What the hell I care? I dead, boy. Huh? What I care? What do I care after I drop dead? When I close my eyes, what do I care? Well, we're not even going to go into the afterlife or talk about the afterlife, but I can tell you one thing. I care. I care. And I don't like what I'm seeing. I do not like what I am seeing. And I am standing up against that. I am standing up to that, what I'm seeing. And for someone to be in our House of Parliament, I used to call it the House of Assembly, but they changed the name to House of Parliament. Let's call it House of Parliament, right? Because it's MP now, member of Parliament, okay? And someone to say this, they need to be challenged. They need to be proven wrong. Because when you say something like that, as serious as that ain't no joke. That is no joke. About people sharing $500 million. You're talking about giving away the people's money. That needs to be challenged. People need to be saying, no, you are wrong. And here is why you are wrong. And the same way I would see that being said is the same way I can go to sleep in the night and say, no, he might have had good intentions. He may have had good intentions, but he made a mistake. But my God, what if he's not making a mistake? What if he's not making a mistake? That is the question. And it is not here or there. When you talk, you see, I can, what should I say? I can take apart a situation and separate church from state, personality from whatever else, right? So in other words, for someone to question something is good. Like this gentleman called me a minute ago. I'm a petroleum dealer. So he's calling and saying that perhaps the gas I've been selling since 1982 may not be doing justice to him as a consumer. I ain't getting puffed up about that, man. I ain't getting puffed up about that. He is entitled to voice his concern. He didn't tell me that. He's asked me. He's asking for advice. So now there's three petroleum companies, whether he gets them or not, I can call one person up I know in one company. And I'm going to mention this about this. So those three companies don't even have him call them. That they can make a statement and say, explain this whole situation, which I believe hopefully can be explained. So when it comes down to a sitting member of Parliament, I could hear the man's voice. And somebody come and tell me, boy, you know what Mr. Minister saying. I could hear his voice. I heard his voice. And what he's saying is doggone serious. Doggone serious. And it needs to be answered. I am a citizen of this country. I am a stakeholder in this country. I have family. I have people that will be after me, and the children they would have or may have will go past them, and on and on and on. And yes, whether I live good today, I have to be concerned of how the people after me will live. Not only my family, but other Bahamians, other people live in this country. And so these matters have to be addressed. And, you know, what can I say of countries I've seen with leadership that end up having 11,000% inflation? What can I say? If you don't think for 1 second that it is your job to help to safeguard your country, then you are wrong. Because if you think for 1 second that you can give power of attorney to anyone to say, do it for me, man, I ain't worried about that, I didn't check it with that, do it for me, right? You will end up, you may not yourself suffer the dire consequences, but I can guarantee you one thing. Someone bearing some of your blood, your DNA, will suffer the consequences. So, you know, I think that we need to go back in history. I remember having a commission of inquiry, and we need to call a spade a spade. But what has to happen is that when you see someone make an accusation, that has to be brought back up, and the public must be satisfied. Oh, that person is wrong. They have apologized for being wrong. I know that in the House of Parliament, I know about that, where they have immunity. They can say all kind of stuff in the House of Parliament and not get sued for it. You do that in public. Like, just to give an example, when my radio show comes on, the people say straight and plain, they ain't responsible. The man can say all kind of foolishness, but don't hold me responsible for that. This man can say all kind of foolishness because, you know, they are protecting themselves against liability. But in the House of Parliament, you cannot sue anyone. Like the guy said the other day, he can come outside the house and tell me that I can sue you. So we have got to be mindful of these things being thrown around, and we cannot become immune to that. In other words, we cannot allow our mindset. In other words, with the crime coming in now, oh, someone got murdered last night. Oh, pass me another serving those fries. Oh, 3 people got shot. Oh, hey, listen, any more of those pork chops left? We cannot succumb to that. We cannot become, our flesh can become deadened to things happening around us that help to deteriorate our base of humanity. Okay, because you see, empty stomachs and impoverished people is not a good thing. And we have enough impoverished people in this world today that those countries that are not impoverished must do what they need to do not to become that way. And any form, I mean, the United Nations have steps that people can stand on and say, no, here's what's happening in our country. Please don't allow that. That is a right. That's an avenue. And it's better to do that. It is better to stand up in any forum. If you cannot get the attention in this country, then go to a country you can get attention. And do not allow anyone to disenfranchise you because they feel that you do not have the ability to affect them. And I go back to my last show where I watched Nuremberg trials. People sitting in the dark. You wouldn't think that they were the ones who shot people in the face, who burned people alive, ordered that their gold in their teeth be taken out before they were thrown in a garbage dump and incinerated. Okay? That's what happens to unaware people. The German people were so shocked when they began to see all of the details. No, it couldn't be. Yes, it happened, and yes, it can be. And I will say to you that the Bahamian people, forget about what political party you're in, but the Bahamian people have an obligation, no matter what political persuasion, you know right from wrong. And I will say that when you look at politics in the world today, and I'll talk about this election in the US next time, right? But when you look, if you are a member of parliament, whether you are one for the opposition or you are one for the existing government, your allegiance must be for the people first. Because those are the persons you promise to represent. And the question of saying, let me close my eyes to this, you cannot hide behind that later on. You cannot hide behind something that went down. And history will be told eventually. Eventually, whether it's you or your children or your grandchildren. You tell me anyone being named Hitler. Tell me anyone being named Mussolini. Tell me. Okay? So we have got to understand that. Now, next week, I wanted to, this week, but of course time wouldn't allow. I want to talk about the U.S. because I know years ago I spoke about that, and I had not a matter of predicting or having any, guaranteed scientific way of predicting it, right? But I felt very firmly that Trump would not win. And I'm going to say right now on public radio that I am encouraged, not because of color, but because the person is qualified, and that's Miss Harris, okay? Okay? And we'll talk about that next week. And I want to thank you for, for being a part of the show, and wish you all the best in the future, okay? Thanks a lot. This is Peter Roker, Global Talk on Global Radio 99.5 in Nassau, Bahamas. Live on Facebook, Cable Bahamas 974, TuneIn Radio, etc., etc., etc. Thank you very much. Good to be here. All the best.
Too fat. I don't want them too slim. I want them nice and bright and real good, look like them tree limb. Have date a Jamaican, have date me a Haitian. I'm going back to the Bahamas right now to date a Bahamian. I'm going by Peter Roker to buy me a super soaker. This gal think I's a joker. Take off her clothes and soaker. I going by Peter Roker. Let's go buy me a super soaker. This gal think I's a joker.